Suffolk County now looking to become the first to require GPS bracelets in family court. This will allow domestic violence victims the ability to track their offender should they violate their orders of protection and approach. Take a look at the bipartisan measure being sponsored by Suffolk legislator Kara Hahn.
When confronted by someone who has hurt her in the past and is threatening to hurt her again, hold up a piece of paper and say, "I have an order of protection, stay away." That doesn't always work.
Suffolk legislator Kara Hahn says in the last few years, domestic violence offenders have violated more than 1,500 orders of protection. Shelter operators say that domestic violence victims often don't even ask for the court orders, fearing it will only escalate the violence.
Taking action against the abuser by reporting it to police or attempting separation often places a victim at higher risk.
Domestic violence advocates point to the horrific stabbing death in 2009 of Joanna Bird. The Nassau woman had a protection of order against the father of her children. Shocked jurors listened to recordings of his threats against Bird despite the order of protection.
When I get home, I'm going to give you a big knife and I'm going to have a big knife, and we're going to be locked in the room and see who goes first. Because I want you to suffer. I want you to suffer so bad.
Legislator Hahn and her backers say Joanna Bird could have been saved if Bird had been armed with a GPS ankle bracelet detector, similar to this one being marketed on the internet.
Anytime the two units come within a certain distance, the victim would be alerted.
The Suffolk legislature is expected to approve a trial program by purchasing 30 of the GPS detectors. Judges would order the worst offenders to wear a GPS bracelet, allowing victims to track their movements through the portable detectors.
Call 911 immediately. I would not want to be another victim again.
Now, joining us now is Colleen Merlo with the newly named LI Against Domestic Violence, formerly known to people as the Suffolk County Coalition Against Domestic Violence. Welcome to the show. I know that you run shelters and safe houses for victims of domestic violence. First of all, how many people do you serve and why the name change?
Well, we did a strategic planning process, and part of that was getting feedback from our stakeholders and looking at how we provide services. And this name is more reflective of the coalitions that we formed across the island and the partnerships. So
more than Suffolk County now.
Yes.
Long Island, that implies are pretty much there. You know, I guess the number one question is how big is the need? We've seen statistics that have been quoted by backers of the measure we just talked about, saying that the violations of orders of protection are up 16%. How many orders of protection are being violated each year in Suffolk County?
I know the number that was put out there was 1,500. Now that
1,500?
Correct.
That's a lot. Is violence sometimes involved in these cases too?
Violence can be a part of it, but a lot of it is cases where the person's doing unwanted contact, phone calls, things like that. And that can be just as devastating as the violence, but certainly this measure is aimed at curbing the violence.
So here it's new for family court, and you know, it's been applied in criminal court where people obviously go bust down a door and you get arrested and you've you know, tried to hit somebody with a weapon. You're already going to be put in one of these ankle bracelets, but now this could be family court situations. What kind of situations do you see where prosecutors from the district attorney's office are now going to ask that this bracelet be placed on an individual so that the victim can track them? What kind of cases do you think that's going to happen?
I think it's going to be in cases where there has been repeated violence over time, or where the person may be involved with other criminal activities, because those are the cases where the court order really isn't enough, the protective order.
Do you worry that defense attorneys are going to say that this is another scarlet letter for men in marital and domestic disputes as a defense against it?
I mean, I'm sure that the people that have to wear it and are ordered to wear it are going to use that as an argument. But the truth of the matter is that GPS devices have been used and upheld in court.
Now, equally new is this idea, though, that a receiver could be worn by the victim, which in 90% of the cases is a woman being harmed by a male for whatever the reason, and that they would at least be able to avoid the most terrible situations where they don't know the person's about to attack them. Do you think women are going to be willing to do this, to wear this receiver?
I think they will, because it will extend a level of protection for them. Currently, the way the orders are written is the person may need to stay away from the home, or may need to stay away from a certain area, and that's where the GPS device would go off. This will allow the woman to feel safe in any situation.
Well, what would the distance be set at? I mean, how do you decide that? Because, I mean, if somebody's coming that's looking to hurt you, you're going to want miles between you, not a couple of feet.
Yeah, that's something that will be set by the courts.
So that's yet to be determined. And we're told the offenders would have to pay for these court-ordered monitors, so it could be costly for them as well if they're told in family court they got to wear a bracelet. Something like $13 a day was one estimate.
Yes, it could be costly for offenders.
So these are things that Suffolk County is looking to do. We've already talked. Why are women reluctant to go for an order of protection? Explain that.
Well, orders of protection have consequences for women, too. Actually, that's a period of time where violence can be escalated because the offender is losing power. It can also have financial consequences if the offender loses his job as a result or can't work.
Can create an enraged type of situation as well, right? How could you do that to me? We see that many times as reporters when we respond to these cases because these are momentary decisions of anger that people make. You see this all too often. Your whole agency is about protecting these women. Do you think that this idea will actually help in reducing the amount of violence that is perpetrated against the victims?
I think it's a tool. I think it's one of many tools that can de-escalate violence.
You know, sometimes people have this image of who the typical victim of domestic violence is. Usually they think of it's a woman. Is there a typical victim of domestic violence?
You know, sometimes I wish there was because it would make my job a lot easier. But in short, no, there's no typical victim of domestic violence.
All right, so what's the next step for this? We're going to see this as a trial program. I think they're talking about putting 30 in. It's going to take months before any of this can happen. We're told at the earliest in the summer, right?
Yes, they're still vetting vendors and deciding, you know, how to implement the program.
Yeah, and they're going to, you know, I mean, it's so new that they're actually surfing the internet, not sure which vendor to use. And it seems to me like it's not anything out there right now is actually customized. You would want something small for a woman to wear this, wouldn't you? Something she could wear on her watch or a bracelet?
I've even heard that there may be cases where the smartphone can actually be notified. So, you know, I think it's an emerging technology and hopefully it will get better over time.
It's like everything else, just keeps getting smaller and smaller and more efficient. But we want to thank you for talking about this new tool that's coming to Suffolk County and perhaps elsewhere, this trial program of allowing women to wear receivers so they can track the offenders, most cases women, who are wearing an ankle bracelet. Colleen Merlo with the LI Coalition Against Domestic Violence. Thank you very much.